On today's show, the Cavs season is at an end with that Game 5 loss to the Boston Celtics. That's coming up on today's Locked on Cavs.
You are Locked on Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome into the Locked on Cavs podcast. I am Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarrell. We are the Locked on Cavs podcast, your team every day. Jake Stevens here as always, and the Cavs 2023-2024 season is over with a Game 5 loss to the Boston Celtics. Evan, what is your big takeaway from what is the final game of the season?
It's kind of a bitter pill. Donovan Mitchell watching the team get eliminated from the sidelines, and unfortunately, I think that bitter pill goes both ways, just because injuries kind of defined this entire season for Cleveland, but I think this is the one injury that they couldn't get past. I think they laid it all out on the floor in games 4 and 5. I think we did see some not great effort on offense at times down the stretch in game 5 against Boston, but it does always make you sit back and wonder, like, what could have been if Donovan Mitchell's knee or calf wasn't 100%. And I think it is, again, like the ultimate bitter pill that injuries will dictate how the season went, and it ultimately cost Cleveland probably a lot more firepower in this series. But overall from this game, Evan Mobley looks really good. I think that's just, a positive to kind of plant your flagpole in for heading into this offseason, looking ahead perhaps, just in terms of what the dichotomy or what this Cavs team could be, depending on who is still here, maybe after Mitchell's decision. But Mobley looked really good, and, did not have Marcus Morris Sr. turning back the clock on my bingo card quite like that.
Yeah, we can get into some of the big picture stuff. I think we can build to that. We also have a lot of shows, so we can get to them. But I think for me, this game, it was like how this happened is you're fighting an uphill battle. This was the same thing I think we've seen in different ways this entire series. I mean, Darius Garland had a really hard time getting going in this game. 4-17, 0-4 from 3. Does have the 9 assists, but really struggled to get his looks off when he did have space and when he didn't have space. And if you had gotten anything from him or anyone else, maybe this game gets a little closer. You were within 5, I believe, during the fourth quarter, and he just couldn't get over that hump. Like, Mobley was incredible. I thought it told you something about where he's comfortable, and I think this series as a whole, even if it ends the way it did and as quick as it did in 5, tells you it should be a learning experience for him, playing the 5 and growing. You obviously got a great game out of Marcus Morris, but you didn't get much from anyone else. Okoro didn't give you much. Dean Wade didn't give you much. Strus played heavy minutes, was fine. Had some assists and whatnot, but like as a scorer, didn't give you much. Sam Merrill gave you his 9 in nearly 30, and it was interesting to see them pull that lever fully in this game and give him nearly 30 minutes. But like Niang was awful, in this game once again. So like it shouldn't have enough. And if considering the injuries, considering I think what we ended up kind of understanding about this roster, Evan, and what it is, this makes sense. You just did not have enough fighting an uphill battle against Boston is where the season ends, and I think that feels right in a way.
Yeah, we talked about this before the mics were hot and we started recording, but more or less Max Strus was the secondary ball handler and creator in this game, especially minutes-wise, because Isaac Okoro played less than 13 minutes in this game. But like you said, you got the assist, you got the playmaking. I think that's, noteworthy. I think, maybe that's a building block. If Strus is here next season, you'd assume he would be just for now. But it is an uphill battle with no Donovan Mitchell, no Karis LeVert, no backup point guard whatsoever after the Ricky Rubio fiasco, and Craig Porter Jr. being unavailable. So it was Darius Garland on an island, and I think that I just can't imagine. All respect to Craig Porter Jr. was a fun rookie season. I would be interested to see where he gets better in the summer and what he looks like in summer league. Like, he would have been vastly outclassed and overmatched in this series. Oh, correct. But it's another body that can handle the basketball. It's just skill set wise is what I'm saying. But it just left Darius Garland on an island in terms of making and creation, and sure, the 9 assists to 2 turnovers are great, but I think Garland pressed a lot in this game. He was 4-17 from the floor, 0-4 from 3. Somebody pointed out to me the other day, I think it was Tony Pesta, that Darius Garland isn't a guy that is really adverse to contact. He just avoids it altogether when he's in the paint. So he's dribbling around it the whole time, so maybe that's just something noteworthy to look at going forward. But outside of Evan Mobley, who again I think really did show up and treated this like an elimination game, and I think this Strus did for the first half, but like the Celtics started out slow, the Cavs started out hot, and I think the Celtics definitely settled it in the second half too, and just turned up the intensity ever so slightly, kind of dared Cleveland to match them shot for shot on the perimeter, and it certainly wasn't the case. And I mean, I guess for the folks who want to cry about officiating or fouls, they had the same amount of foul shots. It's just Boston made 19 of their threes, Cleveland only made 13, and I mean that's doing the math in my head now, that's literally the number of this game. Like Cleveland would have won this game and punched the ticket back to Rocket Mortgage if they had made or matched Boston shot for shot wise on the perimeter. But it's also just the Celtics are a gear ahead of the Cavs. Like they have two superstars. They have a top 5 player in the league in Jason Tatum, and the Cavs were, again, I have to tip the cap. Like they did a lot of the team, a good portion of the team showed up, at least kept it competitive all throughout, maybe until about like 4-ish minutes left in the fourth when it got out of hand. But it's just too little too late. And also, like you said, it was an uphill battle, just especially once Boston got comfortable when the second half started.
We can oversimplify things. We can do that, and when maybe I'm doing that here, I want to like just couch that in what I'm saying. But the Cavs needed Donovan Mitchell to be nuclear in this series if they wanted a shot. And when he gets hurt, you weren't going to do it. Donovan Mitchell played like he was the best player on the floor in the series, and if you want to pick a Tatum and stuff, I think you could argue that. Like he was incredible, and he certainly didn't have some of the lulls I think Tatum did in this series. But the moment he goes out, the moment the calf issue happens and he can't go in games 4 and game 5, I thought this was done. I didn't think they had a shot to win out of these games, much less make this a real series and come back. When you did not have him, this is, I think, where you ended up. And that's unfortunate. There's some bad luck there. How that should cloud your thoughts going forward is an open question. And to me, I would have a take on that. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about maybe not this episode, but in the future. But I think we didn't have Mitchell. This is where you were always going to end up, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially just because there are some clear flaws in this Cavs team in terms of just guys who are able to remain consistent when the pressure's on, and Mitchell was one of those guys who certainly washed off the stink of being a bit of a playoff choke artist. Maybe it's just Jalen Brunson that night or bogeyman in the playoffs, and that's just is what it is. But it's just unfortunate because I agree. Like if you had Donovan Mitchell, who was, I would say, going nuclear before his calf started acting up and like trying to give everything he can, it's just the Cavs couldn't find anybody else to kind of not even meet him at the summit, meet him like a halfway or 66% of the way, just to kind of make it a little bit easier on him. But yeah, as soon as he went down to the calf injury, and it was just kind of a chain reaction where you could just tell in game 4 and 5, like the Cavs are just a completely different beast. Totally, sure, they play, I guess, more team-oriented basketball if that's your jam. There's a lot of passing and movement and stuff, but it doesn't matter as much when you don't have that guy who can kind of handle the pressure and get you the big shots when you need them to. Because if the Cavs had Donovan Mitchell in this game, sometimes or somewhat got out of hand. I want to think the moment, like when the Cavs cut it within 9 off those 2 Evan Mobley free throws, if you had Donovan with 3:25 left in the game, if you had Donovan Mitchell on the floor, you'd have more than a puncher's chance to possibly steal this win in Boston and get back home for game 6 and then reset the palette and hopefully drag this out to 7. That's just the deciding factor, and it's really hard to make up those 33 points that he averages in the play, or 29 points he averaged in the playoffs, and it's even more difficult to make up just for what he brings the Cavs intangibly on a nightly basis.
All right, coming up on Locked On Cavs, let's dive into Evan Mobley. I want to spend a moment on him and what this game was, what he was in the series, what this tells us about him. I think that's the guy I think deserves some love for the night he played more than anyone else. That's coming up right up next. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Evan, so Evan Mobley in this game, what stood out to you? What popped? What was most impressive to you about the night he had as the Cavs season ended?
I think he was just very, very aggressive from get. I think there's a lot of just things like the Cavs were relying on him in the post. They were letting him create from the top of the elbow. They're using him a lot in the pick and roll. I think, sure, he finished the night 0 of 3 from 3, but he was taking the threes. He was passing. He was rebounding. I think, again, the Celtics didn't have a clear answer for him. And Al Horford, oh my God, had the most clutch game of his career, but like Horford did struggle to defend Mobley at times, and I think that's just been a common theme all throughout the series is the Celtics didn't really have a defensive answer for Evan Mobley, but like he took advantage of it and he tried to shoulder the load and step up as Cleveland's best player on the floor, especially with the lack of Donovan Mitchell. Like he understood the assignment. Like the Cavs had to go out there like this was their very last game in the world, and I would say he left it all out there. What about you?
I think him in the middle of the floor, him not in the post, right? Like he's getting the ball at the elbow. He's cutting from there. He's cutting from the middle of the floor. He's not just hanging around the rim. It looked comfortable to him. It looked organic. It looked like that's where he should be, and you were spaced out. And that to me is the template for him on offense. I mean, I think that tells you something that he looked like that. That was as comfortable as we've ever seen him look on offense. This series is as comfortable as he's ever looked on offense. He was really good on defense as well. Had an amazing steal in this game. Did a ton of great stuff. To me, aside from Mitchell, and maybe like you put him above Mitchell just because he played the 5 games and whatnot, but like the most impressive guy coming out of the series to me in some ways is Evan Mobley. That's a big thing to hang your hat on if you're Cleveland, who's probably about to give him a big contract, a big rookie max extension. That to me, I wonder how this game will stick in the Cavs' heads and how they look forward. Because like that, this Evan Mobley can exist in spurts when you're sharing the floor with Jared Allen a lot, but it can't exist in the way you would want it to maximize what he is if those two guys are playing together. Like that's what is it? We're thinking the end of the season. That can't help but stick in my mind. But without him, without Marcus Morris, like they're not even close in this game. I mean, without this, we could have fired up the mics mid-third quarter, and been like, all right, well, season's over. To Mobley's credit, like he's the driver of how this game didn't totally get out of hand for the Cavs.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the Jared Allen point and going forward is an interesting one. I think it's going to be an off-season question no matter what, just because it is becoming pretty clear that Evan Mobley does function better as a center with shooting surrounding him. And sure, he can give you that perimeter touch, as we have seen all throughout the season and at least on the attempts this evening against Boston, but it's just not going to be something that's like consistently part of his offensive attack. I think you would be comfortable with the 3 to maybe 4 max 3-point attempts tonight if he is your starting center and you have a stretch 4 next to him instead, or just shooting around him on the floor instead. But I agree, like you're not utilizing him in the post and you're not, I agree with you 100%, but I think it is interesting just because it's something we touched on, just like with watching Evan Mobley having to take over at center with Jared Allen being sidelined due to being out with a rib injury for more than 2, almost 3 weeks, I want to say. Weird to say. But like we saw Mobley kind of look a little uncomfortable, look like he was a little overwhelmed, but kind of like the microprocessing computer he is, like he was able to kind of compartmentalize the data, figure out like what does and doesn't work for him defensively, especially when playing center. But you're seeing more and more of that growth and more of that comfort through the series. I think this game is the apex of it, where he does look a lot more comfortable out there without having to share the floor with Jared Allen on defense. And then not having Jared Allen out there also just leads to more of an instant translation on offense because there's spacing around him and he's able to just kind of use his gifts and talents as a unique player to kind of accentuate Cleveland's offense and also thrive just as the only guy attacking the basket on most possessions when he has the ball.
Any other Marcus Morris? Pretty great.
I mean, holy cow, man! Good for Marcus Morris.
He probably earned, honestly, with this Cavs run. I don't know if it's in Cleveland or not. I don't think he's like
got
a
another
rotation guy
contract
for,
out
like,
of this run
he's
with a
gonna
team,
get
whether
a
it's
nice-
Cleveland or another team.
Yeah,
He got a contract, like not just a
couple
vet min,
no, come on. I mean,
like a hair above a vet min deal or something. I'm saying like so, if somebody has like a small sliver of a mid-level exception, they'd use that on Marcus Morris.
I think if he gets I think Evan even just getting he's going to get the veteran minimum, and that's like a win. Like, he wasn't on a roster, he was just bouncing around. Like, he's in the veteran minimum stage of his career. Once you get bought out, it's harder to like escalate back up. He's going to get the veteran minimum.
The bouncing around part is completely fair.
Yeah,
I always do.
He might not have gotten that.
Cleveland.
Yeah, he might not have gotten that before. Other than this.
No, and good for him. Like I said, I was pleasantly surprised. Did not have that on my bingo card for him to go out for 25 points. I think, credit where credit's due. JB, if Isaac Okoro didn't pick up those 3 quick fouls, you wouldn't have seen Bickerstaff pull that lever on Morris right away, and Morris responded in kind, and I think was a guy who, I mean, from the moment he was brought here, has consistently like preached the message that like, hey, the playoffs is where you leave it all on the line. You have to kind of 10 toes on the line, but also be ready to go out to, I guess, war in a sense, but just, leave it all out there. And Morris definitely was the guy who left it all out there. Yeah, he, this isn't the first time he's had a big game for the Cavs in the playoffs, but I think this is, obviously his biggest as a Cavalier. But yeah, whether it's with the Cavs or another team, he has definitely earned more than a chance to sign with a team in free agency and not have to do the song and dance of he's like a veteran at the last minute and the team signs him or camp or something. Like he's not an immediate summer free agency hire, but he's a guy who gets picked up early on into the free agency process, not a guy who's like a last minute addition, because I think he has shown that he does have some gas in the tank and he does have some juice. Not saying it's 25 points a night. He was like a point shy of tying his career high, I think, but in the playoffs. But there's still some juice you can squeeze out of Marcus Morris Sr. And yeah, like you said, whether it's with the Cavs or another team, he definitely showed it tonight.
Yeah, that's kind of my list of positives. Like, Garland really had struggled with Horford. Like, they couldn't sustain the defense needed to. Boston left some doors open, and that's what this game was.
When they got it within 4 minutes to go, I thought there could be a chance, and then the Celtics just kind of not slammed the door shut, but they politely closed it and punched their tickets to the conference finals, and I'm like, there it is. But I will say this, in terms of just power forwards or backup guys, if you had to pick between Marcus Morris Sr., Dean Wade, and George Niang, lean toward Morris Sr. right now if they're all 3 on the roster heading into next year and you had to give like rotation minutes to them.
That's one of the bleakest things I've ever heard in my life.
Hey man, the Cavs also traded cash for Damian Jones, who was outplayed by and post performance enhancing drugs Tristan Thompson. So yeah, that's what stinks. I think that's what stinks most is I still have a lot of questions about this Cavs team, and I wish I didn't. And a lot of it does hinge on Donovan Mitchell, but like, I can't. There's stuff to criticize for sure, especially in this series, but there is some good throughout all that bad where it makes you want to like, you're hooked on it and you want to see more of it, but you're like, no, they got to do some stuff. But we'll talk about that in the coming days, the upcoming segment, whenever.
So up next is going to be lessons learned from this playoff run. I don't think there's a big need. Like, maybe we'll do some more on this in a future episode, but let's just take a second.
Needs.
All right, give me when we come back, you're going to give us your number one lesson. We'll each do one in this last segment and wrap up the show that way. We'll do more in the coming days. But Evan, give me your number one lesson from this playoff run. We'll get to that after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, big or small, and we keep them bottled up. It can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. I'm a regular therapy goer. I go, if not every week, every other week. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, you should consider giving BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, what's your first lesson from these playoffs, Evan? Give me the one we're going to get to today. Give me your big one.
The Cavs need wings. They just need wing depth. Like, it's been a mystery that has befuddled them since LeBron has left town. Again, not an easy position to ever build out of because it's the greatest player of all time. But you watch, like, Jason Tatum had some ho-hum games early, but was able to put it on. Jaylen Brown kind of got whatever he wanted early in this series, and the Cavs turned up against him. But, like, you have so many guys playing out of position at the 3 and the 4, and this is something we talked about last offseason with hybrid wings and, like, that position specifically. But if you're the Cavs, like, it's a flawed roster still, and you have to kind of figure out that gap where you're never going to be able to perfectly defend Jason Tatum or even, like, the length and size of the Magic, like Franz Wagner or Paolo Banchero, but you need to have a bit of more of an immediate answer in front of them to make it harder for them.
Yeah, look, I think we knew that. I think, to me, it's like this probably reaffirms it, but I think we already kind of knew. It's like wing is the big issue on this team, and if we're thinking about reshaping this roster, you're making fake trades like a year ago, 6 months ago. It was, okay, can you get a big wing? It was why, like, I mean, it's why you end up trying to get Marcus Morrison here. It's why, you know, Strus was such a big deal for them last summer. It's probably why they overpaid for George Niang.
Yeah, George Niang, you paid for the shooting, I think, and he's a good example of
$8.5 million next year.
3 years, fully guaranteed, baby.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him getting that bag. Salute it, King. But more so the fact that, like, with Niang, yes, he fits that archetype, like, offensively, but, like, defensively, that's why you couldn't play him. If his shot wasn't falling, like, Tatum or Brown or whomever was on the floor for Boston at that point was licking their chops on the perimeter because they're like, okay, let's just, you know, drag Niang out in isolation and let's just pick him apart. And either he fouls us from swiping down out of frustration or we get an easy bucket. And I think that is just a weak link in Cleveland's part, but also, like, you know, their hand was forced quite a bit just because of the lack of depth. But also, I think that's why you see Morris play 33 minutes and Niang play 8. Also, Isaac Okoro having foul trouble doesn't help either. But it's just wonky for me to think that the Cavs started 2 shooting guards, a point guard, a power forward / small forward, I guess, in Dean Wade, and Evan Mobley. And I'm just like, man, it does stink that they just don't really have any wing depth on this team still. And I think just, like, if you want to be able to hang with, like, Boston's, and I think Orlando's just going to get better with time. So the Orlandos of the world, or even Milwaukee, who has Giannis and Dame and Chris and everything else, and, like, they could get younger too this offseason. Like, looking ahead, like, you need to address the position. And unfortunately, it's also just the position where everybody has a need. So the Cavs are competing with all 29 other teams to fix this problem. Even the Lakers, who may not keep LeBron.
They're keeping LeBron.
But what if the Mavs draft Bronny? Kyrie and LeBron have their reunion. Luka gets to play with his favorite player ever.
That's a question for Locked On Mavericks and Locked On Lakers. My lesson is, I think this demands change. I think you can't, if you're the Cavs and your goal is evolve, keep getting better, take a bigger step forward, do all the stuff that you kind of proposed you wanted to do. You talk about everything you want to accomplish and what your goals are, but going back to the regular season, winning, you know, making a deep playoff and all this stuff.
Well, I think it's time to Donovan Mitchell in the first place. Like, yeah, show you're a big boy and ready to win. You got to do it,
and maybe keep him.
Yeah,
if that's even on the table. I think that could mean coaching. I think that means making trades that carry some risk but change up your roster. I think that means being, frankly, just more cutthroat and innovating your coaching staff. If you do go the coaching route change you've ever been, like, you got to bring in new ideas, you got to bring in new thoughts, and you got to evolve and get with the modern NBA and take this roster to a place where it's not right now. This roster is not good enough. This roster, for Mitchell and how good he is, I think demands more. I think you have a lot of hard questions to ask, but I think if last year you made some small changes and, you know, they got you to the second round, that's great. You still lost in 5. I know there's injuries. I know they'll talk about the refs in game 4, all that stuff, whatever. Okay, you lost. If you want to go farther, if you want a real chance at going farther and evolving your team, I think that the lesson from these playoffs and the season is it's time for some change. It is time to evolve, and it is time to do some stuff that is hard, but the hard stuff is the only way you get further than you've been so far. And, like, look, you made the second round. Congratulations. You won a series. That's great. if you want to go farther, you can't run this back again and have the fans excited, have your team excited. Nothing will be good about just running this back, and you haven't done enough to really warrant it, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anything warranted it last year with them more or less running it back. I was stunned with some of the offseason decisions and kind of just firm answers they put out in the first place when it came to just like possible changes. I remember JB Bickerstaff was asked about the offense, and Kobe Altman quipped, "Is there something wrong with our offense?" And like during media day this year, and I'm thinking like, yeah, like they just don't have an offensive identity, and that's just something you can't really manifest. And this isn't the dump on JB Bickerstaff segment of the show, but like I think he's a fine coach. I think he has done an admirable job with this team. I think a lot of the players in that locker room do like him, but it could be a coaching change. I do agree with you, like especially now because they've gotten Donovan Mitchell, they are asset limited, so they have to really have those uncomfortable conversations of, okay, and it's not going to ever be as uncomfortable as trading Colin Sexton was for them, or like Lauri Markkanen as well, but like to get Mitchell. So, but like if Mitchell commits to you and it's a long-term commitment, the pressure is on Cleveland to build a winner around him and him only, no longer focusing on this core four or whatever you want to call it. You build around Mitchell and you maximize his abilities and opportunities, because he has made it abundantly clear from the moment he's gotten here to the moment they lost last year to media day this year and all throughout this season. He wants to win. He's fed up of losing in the second round. This is the third time a team of his has done it in his NBA career. And he has been a guy who has been active in input and roster decisions. He was a part of bringing in Niang and Strus for the Cavs, but he's going to have a lot of input and sign off on a lot of things if he commits. But if he doesn't, that's a whole other can of worms. But either way, I think change just has to come regardless, because you need to jumpstart this team somehow so you can avoid some of these more lifeless moments, especially when the games matter most.
So better. All right, we're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarrell. We'll be back either later this week or early next to start getting ready for the offseason, the draft, all that stuff. Looking back at the season well with some player reviews, all of that and more. Until next time.
I got some news.
What?
Chris and I are the biggest draft buffs ever. Fully know who the Cavs should take at 20.
I have no idea, and I
was joking.
Oh, well,
we're gonna pull back the curtain, and Rafael Barlow's just gonna come in through the window and save us all.
Well, I have some things. Jake, forgot to say, our producer Jake wanted us to tell you listeners and viewers that he called this game, quote, the Evan Mobley legacy game, end quote, earlier today. This on Wednesday. I don't know what that means. We didn't ask for context, but according to our guy Jake.
If he does, let us know that he heard us say it. We do know he listened to the very end of the episode while editing.
Probably does. Jake's a real one. All right, we'll talk to you later. Have a great rest of your day.